The wind howled across the Alaskan tundra like a wounded animal, carrying sheets of snow that transformed the SEAL training compound into a white void. Visibility dropped to 20 feet. The thermometer outside Command Building 7 read -35 degrees Fahrenheit, Christmas Eve, and nobody was happy about it. Inside the barracks, 40 members of SEAL Team Delta gathered around space heaters, nursing bitter coffee and even more bitter attitudes. Staff Sergeant Lucas Crawford threw his tactical gloves against the wall. Christmas Eve training. Someone up the chain really hates us. Could be worse, said Petty Officer First Class Derek Morrison, not looking up from cleaning his rifle. Could be Christmas Day. Tomorrow's the eval, Crawford shot back. Might as well be. The door burst open. Commander Nathan Rivers stepped inside, snow dusting his shoulders like epaulets. The room snapped to attention. Rivers was old-school Navy square jaw, gray temples, eyes that had seen too many missions go sideways. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. Gentlemen, tomorrow morning, 0600. Winter Marksman Evaluation. Full tactical scenario. Live environment simulation, with AI-controlled hostile tracking. You'll be graded individually and as a unit. He paused, letting that sink in. One more thing. We have a special participant joining the exercise. Murmurs rippled through the room. Special participant usually meant brass from Washington or some hotshot instructor from Quantico. Rivers held up one hand for silence. Candidate arrives at 2200 tonight. That's all you need to know. Get some sleep. You'll need it. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Oh, and Crawford? Pick up your gloves. This is a military installation, not your mother's basement. The door slammed. The room erupted in speculation. At precisely 22 hours, a single figure emerged from the supply Humvee that had fought through the blizzard. The SEALs, who happened to be outside smoking, stopped mid-drag. The figure was small, maybe 5'5", wearing standard-issue winter combat gear that looked 2 sizes too large. A knit cap covered most of the face, except for 2 dark eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Morrison crushed his cigarette under his boot. You've got to be kidding me. The figure walked past them without a word, boots crunching in fresh powder, and disappeared into Barracks C, the visiting personnel quarters. By 22:15, everyone knew. The special participant was a girl, 18 years old according to the manifest. Name, Aria Hale. The joke started immediately. Morning briefing, 5:30. The SEALs assembled in the tactical planning room, a concrete bunker lit by fluorescent lights that made everyone look like corpses. Commander Rivers stood at the front beside a tactical map of the training grounds, 12 square miles of frozen hell disguised as Alaskan wilderness. The door opened. Aria Hale walked in. She looked even smaller in the harsh light. Her combat fatigues hung loose. She carried a standard-issue M110 sniper rifle that seemed almost as tall as she was. Her face was young, fresh, unmarked by the sun damage and hard living that characterized most of the men in the room. She wore cheap wool gloves with the fingers cut off. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds before someone snorted with laughter. Commander, is this a joke? That was Lieutenant Marcus Webb, team leader for Alpha Squad, decorated veteran of 3 tours. Did someone's kid sister get lost? More laughter. Aria's expression didn't change. She found an empty seat in the back and sat down, setting her rifle carefully against the wall. Rivers's voice cracked like a whip. Webb, you want to run perimeter patrol for a week? Shut it down, all of you. The laughter died to snickers. Rivers gestured to Aria. Candidate Hale, front and center. She stood and walked to the front. Every eye tracked her movement the way a pack of wolves watches a rabbit enter their territory. Introduce yourself, Rivers ordered. Aria's voice was quiet but clear. Aria Hale, 18, sniper candidate. That was it. She didn't elaborate, didn't explain, just stood there with her hands at her sides, waiting. That's it? Crawford called from the middle of the room. Where you from, kid? What's your background? Classified, Rivers interjected, steel in his tone. Just like half your records, Crawford. Or did you forget about Kandahar? Crawford's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Webb raised his hand like he was in grade school. Sir, with all due respect, she looks like she weighs 100 pounds soaking wet. The rifle alone. The rifle weighs 11 pounds, Aria said, cutting him off. Her eyes met Webb's, I can hold it steady for 4 hours. Can you? The room went dead silent. Webb's face flushed red. You got a smart mouth for someone who probably learned to shoot at summer camp. Enough. Rivers stepped between them. Hale, sit down. Webb, if I hear another word out of you before this briefing ends, you're scrubbing latrines until New Year's. Clear? Crystal, sir. As Arya returned to her seat, Morrison leaned over to Crawford. $10 says she cries before noon. 20 says she doesn't make it past the first checkpoint, Crawford whispered back. They didn't know Arya could hear them perfectly. She'd been trained to filter relevant sound from background noise in environments 3 times louder than this. She filed the information away and said nothing. Rivers outlined the exercise. Rules are simple. This is a hostile environment simulation. You'll each be inserted at different points across the training grid. Objective: survive, eliminate all opposition, reach the extraction point. You'll be tracked by AI-controlled drone surveillance programmed to simulate enemy movements. Paint rounds only, but they'll register on your sensors. If you're hit, you're out. If you're spotted and can't eliminate the threat within 30 seconds, you're out. He looked directly at the room. The terrain is real. The weather is real. The cold is real. If you get hypothermia or frostbite because you're too stubborn to call for medevac, that's on you. Questions? Sir. That was Petty Officer Jensen from Bravo Squad. What about the kid? She gets the same treatment? Rivers' expression could have frozen nitrogen. Candidate Hale follows the same rules as everyone else. Or do you need special accommodations, Jensen? Maybe a heated blanket? Scattered laughter. Jensen shook his head. Good. Transport leaves in 30 minutes. Dress warm, gentlemen. And candidate, it's going to be a long day. As the room cleared, Webb deliberately walked past Arya, close enough that she had to step aside. Hey, kid, he said, voice low enough that only she could hear. When you wash out, remember, nobody here thinks less of you. We just think you don't belong here in the first place. Arya adjusted the strap on her rifle. Winds from the northwest, gusting 20 knots, dropping temp another 5 degrees by 0700. She met his eyes. You'll want to adjust your 0, sir. She walked out, leaving Webb standing there like he'd been slapped. The insertion trucks rumbled across the frozen landscape at 6 sharp headlights cutting through pre-dawn darkness thick as wool. Each seal was dropped at a different coordinate, given a map, a compass, and a tablet showing real-time mission parameters. The AI system controlling the exercise had been programmed by DARPA specialists. It learned, adapted, and didn't forgive mistakes. Arya was inserted last, at the northern edge of the training grounds where the tree line met open tundra. The truck driver, a grizzled supply sergeant who'd seen everything twice, gave her an appraising look as she hopped down into knee-deep snow. You sure about this, miss? This ain't no place for. I'm sure, Arya said. She checked her rifle chamber, verified her tablet connection, and pulled her white camouflage hood over her cap. Thanks for the ride. The truck disappeared into the gray morning, taillights fading like dying stars. Arya stood motionless for 60 seconds, letting her eyes adjust, her breathing slow. The world around her resolved into shapes. Wind-carved snowdrifts, clusters of pine trees bent under white weight, the distant rumble of the transport vehicles dropping other candidates. She checked her watch. The exercise had officially started. 40 SEALs, each one convinced she didn't belong here, each one waiting to watch her fail. Arya smiled, just a little. Then she vanished. The technique was called snow ghosting, and she'd learned it from her father when she was 12. Move with the wind, not against it. Step where the snow is already disturbed. Use terrain features to break up your silhouette. Most importantly, never, ever move in a straight line. Within 5 minutes, Arya had covered 300 meters and left no trace. To anyone looking at her insertion point, it would appear she'd simply dissolved into the landscape. Her tablet buzzed. First contact Alpha Squad's pointman, designated Target 1, was 200 meters southwest, moving along the ridge. The AI drones had already spotted him. He had 90 seconds before they'd simulate hostile engagement. Arya didn't take the shot. Too obvious, too early. Instead, she circled wide, using a frozen creek bed as cover, and positioned herself on an overlooking bluff. From here, she had clear line of sight on 3 different approach vectors. Target 1 reached the ridge checkpoint. He was good, moved tactically, checked his corners, used his cover. But he made one mistake. He relaxed for just a moment, thinking he'd cleared the danger zone. Arya's rifle barely made a sound. The suppressed shot crossed 270 meters, fought through crosswind that would have thrown off anyone who hadn't accounted for the Coriolis effect at this latitude, and hit target 1 square in the center mass. His tablet lit up. Eliminated. Time, 7.3 seconds from first detection. In the command bunker 3 miles away, Commander Rivers and his evaluation team watched the feeds. Lieutenant Webb stood behind them, arms crossed. "Lucky shot," Webb muttered. Rivers didn't respond. He'd seen the ballistic data. That shot was anything but lucky. By 8 hours, Arya had eliminated 6 targets. None of them had seen her. Most hadn't even realized they were in her crosshairs until their tablets lit up with elimination notices. The SEALs started adapting. They moved in pairs now, covering each other, communicating through encrypted channels. The AI system increased difficulty, adding simulated enemy patrols and reducing visibility as the snowfall intensified. Arya moved like smoke through the white landscape. She'd abandoned conventional sniper doctrine, the kind taught in schools, the kind that relied on finding a perfect hide and waiting for targets to enter the kill zone. Her father had taught her different. Be the wind. Be the snow. Never stop moving. Bravo Squad's team leader, Chief Petty Officer Raymond Martinez, was the best tracker in the platoon. He'd hunted insurgents through the Hindu Kush, tracked cartel killers through Mexican jungle. He knew he was being hunted, and he knew by whom. The 18-year-old girl, everyone had dismissed as a mistake. Martinez stopped in a clearing, deliberately exposing himself. "Hail," he called out. "I know you're close. Come out and let's settle this face to face." Silence. Wind rattling through pine branches. Snow hissing against his goggles. "You're good," Martinez continued. "Better than I expected. But you're still just one person. We're 40. Math's against you, kid." From 200 meters away, hidden in a snow-covered depression that made her invisible even to thermal imaging, Arya watched Martinez through her scope. She could take the shot. Center mass. Easy elimination. She didn't. Instead, she fired 3 shots in rapid succession, each one hitting a tree trunk behind Martinez, the impacts forming a pattern. An arrow pointing northeast. Martinez spun, tracking the sound, but Arya was already gone. She'd moved the instant after her 3rd shot, knowing Martinez would zero in on her position. By the time he reached the depression where she'd been, all he found were boot prints, already filling with fresh snow. The arrow pattern, though that bothered him. What was northeast? He checked his tablet. Charlie Squad was positioned northeast, holding a choke point in a narrow valley. If Arya was herding him toward them, that meant his tablet buzzed with 3 elimination notices. Charlie Squad, all 3 members, taken out in the span of 15 seconds. Martinez keyed his radio. "All units, this is Bravo Leader. Target is not operating like a normal sniper. Repeat, not normal engagement patterns. She's hunting us." Crawford's voice came back, crackling with static. "Bravo Leader, that's insane. She's one person. Tell that to the 12 guys already eliminated." Martinez switched to encrypted command channel. "Sir, permission to reorganize into defensive formation." In the command bunker, Rivers considered. Webb was pacing now, no longer making jokes. The elimination rate was unprecedented. Even experienced SEAL instructors rarely managed this kind of performance. "Permission granted," Rivers said. "But Martinez? Don't underestimate her. Something tells me defensive is exactly what she wants you to do." He was right. By 10 hours, 23 SEALs had been eliminated. The remaining 17 had formed 3 groups, each holding defensive positions with overlapping fields of fire. Standard counter-sniper tactics deny the shooter clean angles, force them to expose themselves for any shot. It should have worked. Delta Squad held the eastern approach, dug into snow berms with excellent visibility across 200 meters of open ground. No way anyone could cross that without being seen. They were certain of it. Petty Officer Jackson was on watch when he noticed something odd. A snowdrift about 100 meters out had changed shape. Not much, just a subtle shift in the contour. He studied it through binoculars. Suspicious. The drift moved again. Definitely moved. Jackson raised his rifle, sighting in. Contact, 12 o'clock, 100 meters. The drift exploded upward. Arya had been buried in the snow for 40 minutes, using a reed to breathe, waiting with the patience of stone. She fired 3 times Jackson, then his backup, then the squad leader who turned toward the sound. 3 eliminations in 2.1 seconds. The remaining 2 Delta Squad members opened fire on her last position, paint rounds saturating the area, but Arya had dropped flat the instant after her 3rd shot, rolled 30 feet down a slope she'd scouted earlier, and disappeared into a cluster of frozen shrubs. By the time Delta Squad stopped firing, she was 200 meters away and climbing. The radio channels erupted with chatter. Disciplined communication broke down into something approaching panic. How is she doing this? She's not human. Has to be using restricted tech. Command, request equipment check on candidate Hale. This isn't normal. Rivers's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Belay that. All equipment is standard issue. She's using the same gear as everyone else. Adapt or fail, gentlemen. Crawford, leading one of the remaining groups, stared at his tablet. 9 survivors, including him, 9 out of 40. Against one target they'd all mocked less than 6 hours ago. Sir, Crawford said carefully, what exactly are we dealing with here? Rivers didn't answer immediately. He was watching the tracking data, watching how Arya moved across the terrain. She never used the same approach twice, never established a pattern. She read the landscape like text, understanding not just where the SEALs were, but where they would move next. Something none of you were ready for, Rivers finally said. Now stop talking and start thinking. She's human. She can be beaten. Figure it out. Webb grabbed a spare tablet, pulling up Arya's file. It was marked classified at the top, with most fields redacted, but there were fragments, details that had slipped through. Born, Norway. Father, deceased. Previous training, redacted. Marksmanship scores, redacted. Special qualifications, redacted. The only clear entry was a single line near the bottom, recommended for Winter Phantom program by redacted. Recommendation, highest priority. Winter Phantom, Webb muttered. What the hell is Winter Phantom? Rivers glanced over. Expression unreadable. That's above your clearance, Lieutenant. Eyes on your screen. But the damage was done. The remaining SEALs had heard it over the radio. Winter Phantom. It sounded like a ghost story, a legend. The kind of program that didn't officially exist but that operators whispered about after too many drinks. Morrison, hunkered in a shallow fighting position with Crawford, checked his ammunition. Wind's getting worse. Snow's heavier. We can use that. She's using it better, Crawford said grimly. He'd stopped underestimating Arya around the 15 elimination mark. We need to think like she thinks. What would you do if you were her? Morrison considered. I'd pick us off one at a time until he stopped. Wait. She's not picking us off one at a time anymore. Last 3 eliminations were squad wipes. Groups of 3, 3, and 4. She's escalating. Crawford's eyes widened. She's pushing us together, forcing us to consolidate. Why would she want that? Crawford stood up, urgency in his movement. Because it's easier to find 9 guys in 3 groups than 9 guys spread across 12 square miles. She's hurting us. He grabbed his radio. All units, break formation, scatter, spread out. Do not repeat. Do not maintain defensive positions. Move now. Too late. Arya had already identified all 3 defensive positions. She'd been circling them for the past 20 minutes, marking range, wind conditions, escape routes. The SEALs were dug in, confident in their interlocking fields of fire. They'd forgotten that a field of fire works both ways. From a ridge, 800 meters away, well beyond the effective range most snipers would even attempt in these conditions, Arya began systematically breaking their defenses. She didn't aim for personnel. She aimed for equipment, radios, tablets, optics. Each shot disabled a piece of critical gear, forcing the SEALs to choose, stay in position without communication and intelligence, or move to consolidate. They moved. And the moment they moved, they became vulnerable. 3 years ago, Norwegian coast, north of the Arctic Circle, 12-year-old Arya Hale stood in a snowfield, rifle in hand, shivering despite thermal layers. Her father, Captain Eric Hale, retired NATO Special Operations. Legendary marksman stood behind her, voice patient as carved stone. Breathe. he said. "The rifle moves with your breath. If you fight it, you lose." Arya's target was a paper silhouette 800 meters distant. The wind howled at 40 knots. Snow pelted her face. Her fingers ached with cold. "I can't hold steady," she said. "You're not supposed to hold steady. Steady is a myth. You synchronize. Find the rhythm between heartbeat and breath, between wind, gust, and trigger press. The shot doesn't exist in a single moment. It exists in the flow." She tried. Failed. The round went wide by 3 feet. Again. 50 tries later, she made the shot. Not because she held steady, but because she stopped trying to. She became part of the environment. Wind, snow, cold, rifle, breath, all one system moving together. Her father smiled. "Now you understand. This is why we train in winter. Because winter strips away pretense. In summer, you can fake competence. In winter, the cold knows if you're lying." 2 years ago, same snowfield, Christmas Eve. 15-year-old Arya watched her father pack for a mission he couldn't discuss. She knew the signs, the specific weapons he selected, the way he triple-checked his cold weather gear, the silence that settled over him like frost. "You're going north," she said. Not a question. Eric looked at his daughter. She'd grown tall, wiry, her hands already showing the calluses of serious training. She could outshoot most of his former teammates. "Can't talk about it." "I know." She handed him something, a small compass, brass, worn smooth from decades of use. Her grandfather's compass, passed down through 3 generations. "Bring it back." Eric took it, knew what she was really saying. "Bring yourself back." "Always," he said. He didn't. The official report said equipment failure in extreme weather. Temperature at -50, visibility 0, communications disrupted by solar storm. A routine reconnaissance mission to track Russian submarine activity. Captain Eric Hale and his 4-man team were caught in an avalanche. Only 2 survived. Eric wasn't one of them. They gave Arya a folded flag and the compass, returned with his personal effects. They spoke words about sacrifice and honor and service. She heard none of it. She only heard the wind, the same wind that had been blowing the day he taught her to shoot, the wind that had killed him. At the funeral military honors, rifle salute, the works commander Nathan Rivers approached her. They'd never met, but Eric had mentioned him. His closest friend, his first team leader, the man who'd saved his life in Somalia and later stood as best man at his wedding. "Your father," Rivers said quietly, "was the best winter operator I ever knew, and he talked about you constantly, said you were better than him." Arya said nothing. She was past words. "There's a program," Rivers continued. "Classified. Very few candidates. It's designed for people like you. Like your father. People who don't just survive winter. People who become winter." "Winter Phantom," Arya said. She'd found papers in her father's study. Noticed the program name redacted but visible through certain lighting. Rivers nodded. "You're young. Too young, officially. But I can make an exception. If you want it. I want it. It's not about revenge, if that's why." "It's not." Arya met his eyes. "It's about finishing what he started. He trained me for something. I don't know what, but I know I'm not done." Rivers studied her for a long moment. Then nodded. "Report to Anchorage in 6 months. Bring nothing but what you can carry." "And Arya? The program has a 91% failure rate. Most candidates quit in the first week." "I won't quit. I know." Present day. Alaskan training ground. 11:47 hours. Arya crouched in a snow cave she'd carved with her bare hands. Invisible. Waiting. Her tablet showed 3 remaining targets. Crawford, Morrison, and Webb. They'd finally figured out her strategy and split up, each one taking a different approach vector toward the extraction point. Smart. But not smart enough. She'd known from the beginning that this was the evaluation's true purpose, not to test their skills, to test hers. Rivers had set this up deliberately, 40 experienced operators against one 18-year-old candidate. The kind of scenario that should be mathematically impossible. But mathematics didn't account for 3 years of Winter Phantom training, didn't account for the fact that she'd been raised in environments where most people would die of exposure in hours, didn't account for the promise she'd made standing over her father's grave. She checked her rifle, 3 rounds left, 3 targets. Perfect. Crawford was thinking. That made him dangerous. He'd stopped moving defensively and started moving like a hunter. He knew Arya had to be low on ammunition. She'd fired at least 40 rounds, possibly more. She had to be exhausted, hungry, starting to feel the cold seep into her bones. She was human. She had limits. He keyed his radio short range, encrypted. Morrison, Webb, new plan. We don't go to extraction. We go to her. How? Webb's voice, stripped of its earlier arrogance. She's a ghost. Ghosts leave traces. She's been circling us, moving through the same general area. I've been tracking elimination patterns. Crawford pulled up a map on his tablet, marking each location where a seal had been taken out. Look at this. She's staying within a 4-mile radius of her insertion point. She's not ranging far. Morrison studied the data. Because she has a base, somewhere she's cached supplies, a position she can defend. Exactly. And if we find it, we have her. Webb finished. For the first time all day, he smiled. All right, I'm in. How do we do this? Crawford outlined the plan. It was brutal, simple, and required one of them to act as bait. Morrison volunteered. The trap was set at 12:15 hours. Morrison moved into an exposed position near a frozen lake, deliberately making noise, leaving obvious tracks. He appeared injured, favoring one leg, moving slowly. From 3 different angles, Crawford and Webb waited, rifles trained on overlapping fields of fire covering every approach to Morrison's position. If Arya took the shot, they'd triangulate her position immediately. If she moved to flank, they'd catch her silhouette. If she did nothing, Morrison would slowly make his way toward extraction, and they'd try again. What they didn't know was that Arya had been watching them set up the trap. She'd anticipated this move an hour ago. She didn't take the shot on Morrison. Instead, she fired a single round at the ice near his feet. The frozen lake's surface cracked with a sound like thunder. Morrison had 1 second to realize his mistake. The ice was thin here, barely stable before it gave way beneath him. He plunged into water so cold it felt like knives. His tablet, rifle, all his gear immediately soaked and useless. Training kicked in. He thrashed toward the edge, broke through more ice, fought for purchase. His heavy gear dragged him down. Crawford broke from his hide, running toward the lake. Morrison, hang on! Webb stayed in position, searching for Arya through his scope. Crawford, wait. This could be... But Crawford was already there, lying flat on the ice, reaching out. Morrison grabbed his hand, gasping, lips already turning blue. Together, they struggled to pull him from the water, which meant neither of them was watching their six. Arya rose from the snow 50 meters behind Webb, paint round already chambered. She'd been there for 20 minutes, buried under powder, waiting with the patience her father had taught her. Webb's tablet lit up, eliminated. He spun, saw her standing there, white camo, rifle, those dark eyes, and couldn't help himself. He started laughing. You're insane, completely insane. Arya didn't respond. She was already gone, dropping into a depression and moving toward the lake where Crawford was still trying to save Morrison. Crawford saw her coming and made a choice. He could abandon Morrison and try for the shot, or he could finish the rescue. Military doctrine said eliminate the threat first. Every instinct said the same. He kept pulling Morrison from the water. Arya stopped 10 meters away, rifle raised. Crawford looked up, met her eyes across the frozen wasteland. For a moment, neither moved. He dies, without help, Arya said quietly. First word she'd spoken in hours. You die if you stay exposed. Choose. Crawford smiled bitterly. Not much of a choice. There's always a choice. You made yours already. Her tablet showed the elimination. Crawford didn't argue. He kept working on Morrison, stripping off wet gear, wrapping him in an emergency thermal blanket pulled from his pack. Arya watched for a moment, then keyed a frequency she'd been given for emergencies. Command, this is Candidate Hale. I have a hypothermia case at coordinates. She rattled off the location. Needs immediate medevac. Condition critical. Rivers's voice came back immediately. Copy that. Helicopter inbound. ETA 6 minutes. Arya looked at Crawford. Stay with him. Help's coming. What about you? Crawford asked. I'm going to finish this. She disappeared into the snow. Crawford watched her go, shaking his head. Morrison, buddy, you hear that? We just got our asses kicked by an 18-year-old. Morrison, shivering violently, managed to speak through chattering teeth. Never underestimate anyone again. Yeah. Lesson learned. The extraction point was a clearing on the southern edge of the training ground, marked by a strobe light visible through the thickening snow. Standard protocol survivors were expected to reach the point by 16 hours or call for extraction at their current position. It was 15:30 when Arya reached the clearing. Empty. She'd expected as much. The exercise had effectively ended with Morrison's near drowning. Command would be processing results, debriefing the eliminated candidates, preparing for the investigation that inevitably followed when training exercises went wrong. She stood in the center of the clearing, rifle slung, and waited. At 15:45, she heard them coming. Not one person, not two, all of them. Every SEAL who'd been eliminated, plus the survivors, all converging on her position. She counted footsteps in the snow, identified movement patterns. 40 people, moving with purpose. They emerged from the tree line like specters, white camo, weapons ready, forming a perfect circle around her. No gaps, no escape routes. Professional, coordinated, lethal in their precision. Commander Rivers walked through the circle, stopped in front of Arya. Candidate Hale, the exercise is over. Yes, sir. You have options here. You can accept the outcome as it stands. Or he gestured to the SEALs surrounding her. These 40 men have requested a rematch. No more individual engagements. All of them against you. New scenario. You're cornered in this clearing. They're moving in from all sides. You have 3 minutes to either eliminate all targets or break through the perimeter and reach the backup extraction point half a mile north. Arya looked around the circle, saw Crawford, bruised and soaked. Webb, paint marks on his vest where her round had hit. Martinez, expression unreadable. Morrison, wrapped in blankets but standing, refusing to miss this. Why? She asked. Because they need to know, Rivers said quietly. They need to know if what happened today was luck or if you're something else entirely. And if I refuse, then you pass the evaluation as designed, go home, and we never speak of this again. Your choice. Arya checked her rifle. No ammunition. She'd used her last 3 rounds taking out the final targets. She looked at Rivers. Do I get ammo? No. Do I get any equipment they don't have? No. Do I get a weapon at all? Rivers smiled faintly. You get what you're holding. Make it work or don't. The SEALs tightened the circle. Arya could see it in their eyes. They respected her now, but they wanted redemption. Wanted to prove that the day's events had been an aberration. 40 against 1, no ammunition, 3 minutes. It should have been impossible. Arya raised her empty rifle, sighting through the scope at Webb. He flinched despite himself. She lowered it, considered. Then she did something none of them expected. She dropped the rifle in the snow and held up both hands. All right, let's finish this. Webb frowned. You're surrendering? No, I'm giving you a chance. She pointed at the tree line behind the SEALs. You're all looking at me, which means none of you are watching your 6. Sound tactical? As one, several SEALs glanced over their shoulders. Nothing there. When they looked back, Arya was gone. She'd dropped flat, rolled through a snowdrift, and moved 10 feet in the second they weren't looking. She grabbed Crawford's ankle as she passed, yanking hard. He went down, surprised, and she was already moving again, using his body as cover, weaving through the circle. Paint grenades detonated. She'd planted them earlier, buried in snow around the clearing, triggered by remote detonators she'd kept concealed. Chaos erupted. Sensors lit up across a dozen SEALs. Eliminated. Morrison tried to track her movement, but she was too fast, too low, moving through the snow like she was part of it. She kicked out Jensen's knee, grabbed his training knife as he fell, used it to cut through 2 more opponents' sensor harnesses. Technical eliminations. The circle collapsed inward, but Arya was no longer in the center. She'd already breached the perimeter, moving toward the tree line and the backup extraction point. Crawford recovered, called out, "All units, pursuit formation Delta, she's heading north." They crashed through the forest after her, organized chaos, moving like the professional operators they were. But Arya had 3 minutes of head start and terrain knowledge she'd been building since dawn. She used fallen logs as false trails, marked snow with patterns that suggested one direction while she moved another, created noise in one location while being silent in another. At 2 minutes 40 seconds, she reached the backup extraction point, a small helipad marked with chemical lights, and stopped. The SEALs burst from the tree line, expecting a fight. Instead, they found Arya standing in the center of the helipad, hands behind her back, expression calm. Webb raised his weapon. "We've got you surrounded. Give up." "No," Arya said. "Look up." They looked up. The helicopter had been hovering silently overhead the entire time, thermal cameras recording everything. In the 3 minutes of chaos, Arya had grabbed her planted emergency beacon and activated it. The moment she'd reached the extraction point, she'd technically completed the scenario. Rivers's voice crackled over their radios. "Exercise complete. Final score. Candidate hail. Mission success. All targets eliminated or evaded. Time, 2 minutes 51 seconds. Silence. Then Morrison started clapping. Slowly, the others joined Crawford, then Martinez, then even Webb. They'd been outplayed, outthought, and outmaneuvered by someone half their size and a fraction of their age. Rivers's helicopter descended, kicking up snow. As it landed, he stepped out, walked to where the SEALs had gathered around Arya. His expression was stern, but there was something else behind it. Pride, maybe, or vindication. "Gentlemen," he said, voice carrying over the rotor wash, "I'd like you to officially meet Arya Hale. Call sign, Ghost 18. Youngest graduate of the Winter Phantom program, daughter of Captain Eric Hale, the man who founded that program. And as of today, the newest permanent instructor for advanced Arctic warfare." The implications sank in slowly. She wasn't a candidate. She'd never been a candidate. She was staff. The entire exercise had been her final evaluation to become an instructor, an evaluation that required her to defeat an entire SEAL platoon. Webb shook his head in disbelief. "You've got to be kidding me." "Do I look like I'm kidding, Lieutenant?" Rivers shot back. "Candidate Hale, Instructor Hale, now will be developing and running winter warfare scenarios for special operations units across all branches. That includes you. So I suggest you start getting used to the idea." Crawford stepped forward, extended his hand. "Instructor, sorry about this morning, we were out of line." Arya shook his hand. Her grip was stronger than he expected. "You were testing. That's fine. I hope I passed." "With flying colors," Morrison added. "That thing with the ice that was cold." A hint of a smile. "It's winter. Everything's cold." Martinez approached last, studied her with the eye of someone who'd spent 20 years evaluating threats. "Your father would be proud," he said quietly. Arya's expression softened, just for a moment. "Thank you. He taught me everything." "Not everything," Rivers interjected. "You've developed techniques even he never mastered. The snow ghosting pattern you used this morning, we caught it on thermal imaging. Shouldn't be possible to hide that completely. But you did. How?" "Trade secret, sir. You want to know, you'll have to take my course." The SEALs laughed, genuine now, the kind of laughter that comes after shared hardship and mutual respect. The helicopter pilots signaled that weather was closing in. They needed to move. As the group headed back toward the transport vehicles, Webb fell into step beside Arya. "Question, off the record." "Go ahead. Why did you save Morrison? You could have just eliminated Crawford and won clean. Instead, you called for medevac." Arya walked in silence for a few steps. "Because this was an exercise. He's not my enemy. None of you are. If this had been real combat, different choice. But it wasn't. So I made the choice my father would have made. Mission matters, but people matter more." Webb nodded slowly. "You know, when this day started, I thought you were a joke. Now I'm thinking I never want to face you for real." "You won't have to," Arya said. "You'll be facing people I train. That should worry you more." Webb laughed despite himself. "Great, wonderful, can't wait." The debriefing room was warm, almost too warm after hours in the cold. The SEALs sat in rows while Commander Rivers stood at the front, tactical display showing the day's events compressed into data. Elimination times, movement patterns, shot accuracy, strategic decisions. The numbers were sobering. Arya had eliminated or evaded 41 targets, including the AI-controlled drones, over 9 hours, moved across 17 miles of hostile terrain, and completed 3 separate mission objectives, all without support. with limited ammunition, in weather conditions that grounded most air support. Her average shot distance, 640 meters. Longest shot, 870 meters in 40-knot crosswinds. Accuracy rate, 97%. Rivers let the silence build, then spoke. These statistics are classified at the highest level. You will not discuss them outside this room. You will not discuss Instructor Hale's background or capabilities. You will treat her as you would any other instructor at this facility. He paused, made eye contact with each person in the room. You were told this was a standard winter evaluation. It wasn't. This was a live demonstration of Winter Phantom capabilities, conducted for the benefit of command staff considering expansion of the program. You were not informed because your reactions needed to be genuine. Martinez raised his hand. Sir, who else knows about this? About the program? 12 people worldwide, Rivers said flatly. Now 13, counting Instructor Hale. Winter Phantom operates in deep black classification. Officially, it doesn't exist. Officially, today's exercise was exactly what it appeared to be. A winter evaluation that went well. Questions? Morrison spoke up. Sir, if she's the youngest graduate, how many graduates are there total? Rivers hesitated, then decided they'd earned the truth. 7. Started with 93 candidates over 6 years. 84 quit or were removed. 2 died during training. 7 graduated. Of those 7, 3 are currently deployed in undisclosed locations. 2 are desk officers now, too old for field work. 1 died in action 2 years ago. He didn't have to say who that last one was. Everyone knew. Captain Eric Hale. Crawford asked the question on everyone's mind. What exactly is Winter Phantom designed to do? What you saw today, Rivers replied. Arctic warfare at its most extreme. Operations in environments where most troops can't survive, let alone fight effectively. The program was established after several high-profile mission failures in the Arctic Circle operations, where conventional forces couldn't operate due to weather, terrain, or political sensitivity. Winter Phantom operators are trained to work alone or in very small teams, complete missions without support, and vanish without leaving evidence. Ghosts, Webb said. Exactly. The briefing continued for another hour, covering operational security protocols, training schedules, and the fact that many of them would be called back for specialized winter warfare courses conducted by ARIA. The tone had shifted completely from morning's mockery to professional respect. As the meeting broke up, Martinez approached Rivers privately. Sir, off the record, is she really ready for this? She's 18. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone so young. Rivers watched through the window as Arya walked across the compound, alone, carrying her rifle case through falling snow. She's been ready since she was 15. This job isn't pressure for her, Chief. It's purpose. The day her father died, she lost her family. This, he gestured at the base around them, this is her family now. Us, the work, the mission, and God help anyone who threatens it. Martinez nodded slowly. Fair enough. For what it's worth, she's got my respect. She's got all our respect. Make sure she knows that. She won't ask for it, but she needs to hear it sometimes. Rivers turned away from the window. Dismissed, Chief. Evening, December 24th. The base mess hall had been decorated half-heartedly with strings of lights and a plastic tree someone had found in storage. Most personnel had gone off duty, heading to barracks or rec rooms. But the SEAL platoon remained, gathered around tables pushed together in the center of the room. Someone had managed to procure actual food, not just standard military rations, but steaks, potatoes, something resembling vegetables. A Christmas Eve dinner, traditional in its own makeshift way. Arya walked in at 19 hours, freshly showered, wearing standard base duty uniform. The conversation stopped momentarily, then Crawford stood and pulled out a chair. Instructor, join us. She hesitated. These were the men who'd mocked her this morning, who'd assumed she was a mistake, a liability, someone's daughter getting special treatment. The day had changed perceptions, but old habits ran deep. Webb stood too. Please, we'd like to, apologize properly, which is hard to do when you're not here. Arya sat. The conversation gradually resumed, awkward at first, then easier, as food was passed and stories began. Combat stories, training disasters, near misses that became funny years later. Arya listened more than she spoke, but when she did contribute, her words carried weight. Morrison slid something across the table, a small metal pin worn smooth with age. The Seal Trident insignia. This was my grandfather's, he said. He'd want you to have it. Honorary member and all that. Arya picked it up carefully. I can't accept this. I'm not a SEAL. No, Crawford agreed. You're something else entirely. But you beat 40 of us using nothing but skill and terrain. In my book, that's worth more than most formal qualifications. Take it. Consider it an apology for being idiots this morning. She accepted, pinned it to her collar beside her instructor insignia. Thank you. Martinez raised a glass water, since alcohol was prohibited on base. To Instructor Hale, may she go easy on us in training. To Instructor Hale, the platoon echoed. Arya raised her own glass. To the lessons we learn from failure, and to the people who teach them. They drank. Outside, snow continued falling, blanketing the compound in white silence. Inside, for the first time all day, Arya felt something loosen in her chest. Not quite belonging, not yet, but acceptance, recognition, the sense that she'd proven what needed proving. Later, as the gathering broke up, Rivers appeared in the doorway. He caught Arya's eye, gestured. She followed him outside to the covered walkway between buildings. Your father, Rivers said, without preamble, kept a locker here. Personal effects, some equipment, files from his winter phantom days. It's been sealed since his death. I think it's time you had access. He handed her a key. Building 7, basement level, locker 314. Everything in there is yours now. Arya turned the key over in her hands. Why now? Because now you've earned it. Not by being his daughter, by being his equal. Rivers's expression softened. He'd be insufferably proud right now, probably already planning how to one-up your performance today. A small smile crossed Arya's face. He'd have managed it somehow, maybe, but I don't think so. You did something today he never quite managed. You made it look easy. That's the mark of true mastery, making the impossible appear effortless. He started to leave, then turned back. Merry Christmas, Instructor Hale. Merry Christmas, Commander. She stood alone in the cold for a while after he left, watching snow accumulate on the walkway railing. Then she headed for Building 7. The locker was exactly where Rivers had indicated, 3rd floor down, in a climate-controlled storage area that smelled of gun oil and old leather. Locker 314 was standard military issue, painted green, showing signs of age. Arya opened it with the key. Inside, her father's personal rifle, a custom-built precision instrument he'd called Sneered after the Norse god of winter. His field journal, filled with notes in careful handwriting. A photograph of Arya at age 6, standing in snow with a rifle bigger than herself, grinning with missing front teeth. A letter addressed to her in his hand. She opened the letter with shaking fingers. Arya, if you're reading this, I didn't make it back. I'm sorry. I promised I would, and I failed. That's on me. But I need you to know something. Everything I taught you, all the winter training, the survival skills, the shooting techniques, it wasn't about making you into a soldier. It was about giving you choices. The choice to be strong. The choice to be capable. The choice to walk into any situation and know you can handle it. You don't have to follow my path. You can be anything you want. Doctor, teacher, artist, anything. The skills will always be there if you need them, but they don't have to define you. If you do choose this life, if you're reading this because you joined the program, because you're standing in my old locker room at the base, then know this: you're better than I ever was. I've watched you shoot since you were 8. I've seen how you think, how you move, how you understand terrain and weather in ways I had to study for years. Be careful, be smart. Trust Rivers, he's a good man and he'll look out for you. And remember that being the best at something isn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about being the most adaptable. Winter teaches that. Everything changes, everything flows, and survival belongs to those who flow with it. I love you more than words can express. I'm proud of you beyond measure, and if there's anything after this, I'll be watching, cheering you on, insufferably proud, as always. Make your own path, but walk it with the confidence I tried to teach you. Your father, Eric. Arya read it twice, then carefully folded it and placed it in her jacket pocket. She ran her hand along Sneered's stock. felt the worn wood under her fingers, the balance that came from thousands of hours of use. "I did it, Dad," she said quietly to the empty room. "Made it through evaluation. They accepted me, gave me a position as instructor." No response, just the hum of ventilation and the distant sound of voices from upper floors. "I'm going to keep going, keep training, keep teaching. Because you're right, it's not about being a soldier, it's about having choices, and I choose this." She closed the locker, pocketed the key, and headed back upstairs carrying Sneered. Tomorrow she'd start her first official duties as an instructor. There would be classes to plan, scenarios to develop, new candidates to evaluate. The work of continuing what her father had started. But tonight, on Christmas Eve, as snow fell silently over an Arctic base where 40 battle-hardened SEALs had learned humility from an 18-year-old girl, Aria Hale allowed herself to simply be, to rest, to remember, and to know, deep in her bones, that she'd kept her promise. The wind howled outside, carrying snow and secrets and the whisper of a legend being born, the legend of Ghost. 1-8, youngest winter phantom, who'd walked into mockery and walked out with respect, earned through skill, determination, and the kind of quiet competence that didn't need to announce itself. That night, in barracks across the base, SEALs who'd started the day making jokes found themselves unable to sleep, replaying the hours in the snow, trying to understand how they'd been so thoroughly outmatched. Some felt embarrassed, some felt inspired, all of them felt changed, and in the cold darkness of her assigned quarters, Aria sat by the window watching snow fall, her father's letter on the desk beside her, a small smile on her face as she remembered the wind, the cold, the perfect synchronization of breath and trigger that he'd taught her so long ago. Outside, winter reigned supreme, harsh, unforgiving, beautiful in its terrible purity. And she was home.